The stars were quiet. Too quiet. From the Armstrong Orbital Defense Station, Earth looked almost peaceful, blue and white swirls suspended in the black sea of space. But Commander Jack Reynolds knew better. He had been a soldier long enough to feel when peace was only a mask, stretched thin over the storm about to break. He stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, jaw set as he watched the alien silhouettes hanging above the planet. Imperial ships, massive, dagger-shaped vessels that blotted out the stars as they passed. Their presence had become routine over the last few months, but that made them no less threatening. The Galactic Empire called them enforcer vessels. To Jack, they looked like executioners waiting for the order to strike. "Sir?" A quiet voice broke the silence. Lieutenant Sarah Kim stood at the threshold of the observation deck, holding a tablet in trembling hands. Her face was pale under the cold light of the display screens. The diplomatic channel just went dark. No signal from the Imperial envoy in 12 hours. Jack didn't turn around. His dark eyes stayed locked on the orbiting ships. "That's it, then," he said flatly. "They're done talking." Sarah hesitated, then stepped closer. "Sir, Geneva is still pushing for calm." "Calm won't stop what's coming." Jack's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a man who had seen too many wars. "The Empire doesn't park a fleet over a planet because it wants calm. They're waiting for someone to give the order." Sarah swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Jack finally turned, and the expression on his scarred face made her shiver. "We wait, Lieutenant. And we pray we're ready when it starts." The strike. It happened at 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated. There was no declaration of war, no formal warning, no time to prepare. Just a streak of white fire that cut across the night sky like a god's spear. The impact came seconds later, an incandescent flash in the middle of the Atlantic, near the Azores. From orbit, it looked like a second sun had been born on the ocean's surface. Then came the shockwave. The plume of boiling water rose miles into the sky, tidal waves tearing outward in every direction. Satellites caught the disaster in real time, broadcasting it to every screen on the planet. People from New York to Nairobi watched live as nature itself seemed to convulse. The first salvo of the war had struck Earth. On Armstrong Station, alarms screamed. The deck was bathed in red as every console lit up with incoming data. Multiple kinetic impacts detected, one officer shouted over the din. "Trajectory confirms these were deliberate strikes." Jack's stomach twisted as he scanned the projections. Hundreds of objects were streaking toward the atmosphere. Some were aimed at military installations. Others at cities. "They're not giving us a chance to respond," Sarah said in disbelief. "They're exterminating us." Jack slammed his hand on the console. "Bring every launcher online. This is no longer a drill. I want interceptors in the air 10 seconds ago." But Earth's orbital defense grid had been built for a different era, for rogue asteroids, not a galactic empire. Dozens of projectiles burned through the atmosphere unhindered. Cities lit up like candles. Havana, Alexandria, Jakarta. Millions watched in horror as fire fell from the sky. And across the world, something in humanity broke. The end of neutrality. In Geneva, what remained of the United Nations Security Council gathered in a fortified chamber. Smoke hung in the air, dust settling from the last tremor as the building shook under distant impacts. President Elaine Porter stood at the head of the table. Her usually pristine suit was torn at the shoulder, a streak of blood running down her cheek. Her aides begged her to seek shelter, but she refused. The camera feed went live, streaming to every network, every device, every screen still connected across the globe. "My fellow humans," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos behind her. "Tonight, our planet has been struck. Cities have burned. Families have been murdered. And make no mistake, this was no accident. The Galactic Empire has chosen war." Her words cut through the noise, carried by every satellite, every broadcast relay. "We did not seek this conflict. We swore to remain neutral, to stay out of the galaxy's war. We believed they would respect that. Her jaw tightened. But neutrality is dead. And I tell you now, we will not die quietly. Humanity stands united. We will fight. The chamber erupted in cheers from the council members. Around the planet, screens lit up with a single message: Earth resists. The response. In the Mojave Desert, hangars that had never been acknowledged by any government opened for the first time. Black, angular craft rose from the sand, experimental ships built from scavenged alien technology, their existence known only to a handful of people. Beneath Antarctica, submarine bays unlocked, revealing vessels carrying payloads no human war had ever seen before. Factories shifted into overdrive. Engineers worked around the clock. Soldiers were recalled from leave, reservists activated. Humanity had been struck, but it was not broken. Jack Reynolds stood in Armstrong Station's command center, staring at the display of Earth's surface. Smoke still rose from the cities that had been hit. Casualty estimates were coming in by the second, and they were catastrophic. Sarah stood beside him, silent, pale, fists clenched at her sides. "They think we're weak," Jack said finally, his voice a low growl. "They think we'll roll over." Sarah glanced at him. "Will we?" Jack's eyes hardened. "Not on my watch." He turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet. Mobilize every platform we've got. The next time they fire on us, we'll be ready to fire back." The dawn of war. Far above Earth, the alien fleet continued to hang in silence, their dagger-like shapes glinting in the sunlight. But something had shifted. No longer was Earth a passive world, begging for peace. It was awake now, its claws bared. For decades, humanity had been content to watch the galaxy's wars from afar. But that time was over. The Empire had fired the first shot, and now the world was united in a way it had never been before. Jack looked out the viewport one last time before leaving the deck. "Your move," he muttered to the stars. The war had begun. And this time, humanity would not be the prey. The smell of scorched circuits hung in the command center of Armstrong Station. The red glow of status alerts bathed the deck in a hellish light. Humanity had been struck. Neutrality had been buried under the ruins of its cities. Now came the moment Jack Reynolds had dreaded his entire career, the moment Earth would have to fight back. Jack stood at the central display table, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow over the glowing holomap. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. He couldn't afford to. Around him, the room hummed with frantic activity. Officers barked coordinates, analysts updated threat maps, technicians rerouted power to long-dormant weapons systems. The entire orbital station had transformed overnight from a watchtower into a war fortress. "Commander," Lieutenant Sarah Kim said, stepping up beside him. Her uniform was creased, her eyes bloodshot. "Fleet Command just transmitted authorization. They're greenlighting Operation Breakpoint. Full deployment. We hit them back." Jack stared at the holomap of the solar system, where glowing red triangles marked the enemy presence. The nearest Imperial staging ground was in orbit around Ganymede. 3 cruisers, a destroyer screen, and a logistics depot, just enough force to remind humanity it was under watch. "Send the order," Jack said. His voice was low, but there was no hesitation. "Scramble every asset we've got. We're going to Ganymede." Sarah hesitated. "Sir, our fleet is." "I know what our fleet is," Jack cut her off. "Old, undergunned, and half held together with duct tape and prayers. But it's all we have. And it's going to have to be enough." The gathering storm. By the next orbital cycle, humanity's counter-strike fleet was assembled in high Earth orbit. The USS Truman was at its heart a converted supercarrier turned into a spacefaring behemoth, its massive deck bristling with launch bays and railgun arrays. Surrounding it were a patchwork of frigates, retrofitted mining barges, and experimental gun platforms that had been pulled from black-budget programs the public had never been told existed. From the observation deck, Sarah watched as shuttles ferried soldiers aboard the carrier. She could see their faces through the glass, a mix of fear, grim determination, and burning anger. Many of them had lost family in the first wave of strikes. They look like ghosts, she murmured. Jack joined her, pulling on his gloves. They're not ghosts, Lieutenant. They're the first wave of a new kind of soldier. No more peacekeepers. No more observers. These are fighters. And they're about to remind the galaxy what humans are made of. The fleet jumped for Ganymede under a silence that felt almost holy. First blood. When they emerged from FTL on the edge of Jupiter's orbit, the enemy was waiting. 3 Imperial cruisers hung over Ganymede like watchful hawks, their hulls gleaming silver in the distant sun. Even at a glance, they radiated power, sleek, elegant, and deadly. Human ships looked almost primitive by comparison, blocky silhouettes with exposed plating and visible seams. But they were here. And they were angry. Enemy formations locking weapons, Sarah reported, her voice tight. Good, Jack said coldly. Target the lead cruiser. Let them know we're not afraid to shoot first this time. The order went out. The first human salvo blazed across space. Railgun slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed, followed by a swarm of guided missiles that left bright trails in the void. The lead cruiser's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. Then they fired back. The void erupted in light. In space, there was no sound, only the shuddering of decks, the shaking of hulls, the silent flash of energy beams and missile detonations. The Truman took the first hit, a beam of searing plasma ripping through her forward batteries and venting 3 decks into space. But the carrier didn't stop. Its railgun spat again, hurling tungsten rods the size of telephone poles at near relativistic speed. One of the destroyers exploded in a blossom of fire. Cheers broke out in Armstrong Station's war room. We just took out a ship of the line, Sarah breathed. Not enough, Jack said. Keep firing. We're not here to win, we're here to hurt them. The cost of defiance. The battle raged for 27 minutes. By the time it ended, 1 Imperial cruiser was crippled, venting plasma as it drifted toward Ganymede's surface. Another had been forced to retreat under heavy damage. The last limped away under covering fire. Humanity had bled them, and badly. But the cost was savage. 6 human frigates were gone, their crews lost with them. 2 troop transports had been gutted before they could deploy their payloads. The Truman was barely holding together, her engines burning, her forward decks scorched. When the battered fleet turned for home, silence fell over the command center. The cost was written on every face. Jack stood at the center console, staring at the tactical feed as casualty numbers updated. Do you think it was worth it? Sarah asked quietly, standing beside him. Jack didn't answer right away. He thought of the burning cities, the families who hadn't survived the first night, the ocean still boiling where the first salvo had struck. It was worth it, he said at last. Because now they know we can hit back. And if we can hurt them, we can stop them. The world awakens. When the fleet limped back into Earth orbit, the planet erupted with emotion. Footage of the battle spread across every network, every screen grainy recordings of human ships exchanging fire with Imperial cruisers, the moment the first destroyer went up in a blinding flare. Recruitment centers overflowed. Volunteers lined up outside military installations. Engineers worked around the clock. Humanity had been struck, but the sight of the Empire bleeding had lit a fire no one could extinguish. President Elaine Porter addressed the planet again, her voice calm but fierce. They thought we would stay down, she said. They thought fear would break us. But humanity does not break. From this day forward, we will not merely survive, we will fight. Her words became a rallying cry. The next step. Jack received a sealed transmission that night, encoded with the highest clearance level. It carried a single title, Operation Dawnstrike. When he opened it, the contents made his blood run cold and then hot with determination. It was a plan. Not for defense, not for holding the line, but for a strike deep into enemy space. A strike that would cripple the Empire's logistics network and force them to divert their war fleets away from Earth. It was risky. It was reckless. It was the only way forward. Jack found Sarah staring out the viewport at the distant stars. "This is suicide," she said softly when he told her. Jack smiled grimly. "Then we make it the kind of suicide they'll never forget." The war had entered its second act. And this time, Earth wasn't just reacting. It was taking the fight to the stars. The fleet looked like a spearhead of defiance. From the bridge of the USS Truman, Commander Jack Reynolds watched the formation assemble against the black canvas of space. Ships of every shape and size floated in formation: frigates, converted freighters, orbital platforms strapped with railguns, even civilian cargo haulers now retrofitted as missile barges. They were all that Earth had left. Half the fleet from Ganymede had been destroyed, their crews lost to the void. And yet, here they were, thousands of men and women climbing aboard their ships with grim determination. No one was under any illusions. This mission wasn't just dangerous, it was nearly impossible. Operation Dawnstrike was a gamble of everything humanity had left. The target, Alpha Perseus, a key logistics hub deep in Imperial territory. Destroy it, and the Empire's warfleets would be starved of fuel, munitions, and reinforcements. Fail, and Earth would be left defenseless. Jack stood at the forward viewport, feeling the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. Lieutenant Sarah Kim approached quietly, her face lit by the glow of the starfield beyond the glass. "All ships report ready, sir," she said. Jack nodded, jaw tight. "Then this is it. Once we jump, there's no going back." Sarah hesitated. "Permission to speak freely?" Jack gave her a look. "Always." She swallowed. This feels like the last stand." Jack's expression softened, just for a moment. "Then we make sure it's one the galaxy remembers." The jump. The fleet activated their FTL drives in perfect synchronization. The stars outside smeared into streaks of light, and the familiar solar system was left behind. Inside the Truman, the crew sat in silence, every heartbeat counting down to the moment they would drop out of FTL into the jaws of the enemy. When they emerged in the Alpha Perseus system, the sight stole their breath. The star blazed white against the void, illuminating a latticework of imperial might. Alpha Perseus wasn't just a logistics hub, it was a fortress. Hundreds of warships patrolled its perimeter. Orbital platforms bristled with defense batteries. A massive ring station floated in high orbit over the gas giant, glowing with energy fields, serving as the beating heart of the Empire's supply chain. Sarah's blood ran cold. "God, there are too many of them." Jack's hands tightened on the railing. "Then we punch through." The battle for the heart of the Empire. Fleet, full attack formation. Focus fire on the outer patrol screen. Break through before they can bring the heavy guns to bear. The first salvo lit up the void. Human railguns spat tungsten death, tearing through the first wave of Imperial destroyers. The enemy responded instantly, energy beams lancing out and carving through two frigates before they could even fire a second volley. The Truman shook violently as shields flared under the first hits. "All batteries, return fire." Jack roared. Missiles streaked toward the Imperial blockade, their contrails blazing bright against the black. Explosions erupted in clusters as the first enemy ships died, gutted, venting fire and debris into space. But more kept coming. "Enemy carriers launching interceptors," Sarah reported. "They're trying to cut us off." Jack's mind worked like a machine. Have the second wave swing wide around the asteroid belt. Make them chase shadows. Human ships darted through the field of rocks, using them as cover while their guns spat fire. One after another, human vessels fell. The Harper's Hope was split in two by a plasma beam. The Icarus rammed an enemy cruiser, detonating its own reactor in a final act of defiance that lit the void with a sun-bright flare. But the hole was opening. Gap in the defensive line. Sarah shouted, her voice electric. "We can get through." Jack didn't hesitate. "All ships, drive into the breach. Shields to maximum, engines full burn." The fleet roared forward. The kill shot. The ring station loomed ahead, a colossal halo of steel and light. Its central core pulsed with power, the command center, the fuel storage, the reactor. Destroy that, and Alpha Perseus would collapse. Target the core, Jack ordered. His voice was calm, almost serene now. Fire everything we've got. Hundreds of warheads launched at once, a storm of nuclear fire hurtling toward the target. Railguns hammered relentlessly, pounding the station's shields. Imperial defenses lit up the void, swatting down missile after missile, but enough got through. The first detonation cracked the station's outer ring. The second tore through its fuel depots. The third punched straight into the reactor core. And then Alpha Perseus died. The explosion was blinding, a white-hot inferno that turned the night into day. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing apart smaller ships, scattering debris across the system. The massive station broke into flaming pieces, which spiraled down into the gas giant below. The heart of the Empire's supply chain was gone. The price paid. But victory had a cost. Half the fleet lay shattered behind them. The Truman was on fire, her engines failing, atmosphere venting from 3 decks. Casualty reports flooded in, each one a stab to the gut. Jack stood on the bridge, silent, as damage control crews fought to keep the ship alive. Sarah stood beside him, her face streaked with sweat and soot. "We did it," she said softly, as if afraid to break the spell. "We actually did it." Jack exhaled slowly. "We did." He looked at the tactical display, where the Imperial fleet was scattering, retreating in disarray. "But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Now they know we're willing to strike back." The withdrawal. The battered remnants of the fleet limped home through FTL, leaving the shattered graveyard of Alpha Perseus behind. When they re-entered the solar system, Earth's population poured into the streets. Crowds filled city squares, cheering, crying, waving flags. For the first time since the war began, hope burned brighter than fear. President Elaine Porter stood before the world, her voice carrying over every broadcast channel. "Today, we have struck a blow so deep that even the Empire must pause to feel it," she said. "Today, humanity stands tall. We did not choose this war, but we will choose how it ends. And we will end it on our terms." Her words echoed across the planet. The new future. Back on Armstrong Station, Jack stood alone at the viewport, looking out at the stars. For weeks they had been the enemy's domain, cold, silent, dangerous. Now, they felt different. Now they felt like a challenge. Sarah joined him quietly. "So what happens now?" she asked. Jack's lips curled into a faint smile. "Now." He turned his gaze back to the stars. "Now we stop surviving and start winning." The stars glittered like a million watchful eyes. Somewhere out there, the Empire was regrouping, plotting its revenge. But Earth was ready. For the first time in history, humanity had proven that it wasn't just another backwater species, begging to be spared. It was a force to be reckoned with. And the galaxy would never forget it.